Beloved, loneliness is a feeling we've all encountered at some point in our lives. It's that aching silence, the empty seat at the dinner table, the quiet space where we wish someone would fill the void. But what if I told you that loneliness isn't something to run from? What if instead of seeing it as an enemy, we embraced it as a guide? One that leads us back to ourselves. Loneliness is not just about being alone, it's an invitation to rediscover who we are beneath all the noise and expectations. For so long, we've been conditioned to believe that being alone means being incomplete. Society paints solitude as something tragic, as if we're only whole when someone else validates our worth. But this belief robs us of something sacred, the relationship we have with ourselves. True connection doesn't start with others, it starts within. If we don't learn to find peace in our own presence, no amount of companionship will ever fill the spaces we've neglected inside. The truth is, loneliness is often a signal, not a sentence. It's our soul whispering, "Come back home." But instead of answering that call, we distract ourselves. We scroll through social media, binge watch shows, or throw ourselves into relationships that don't serve us just to avoid sitting with our own thoughts. Yet the discomfort we feel in solitude isn't something to be feared. It's a doorway to self-awareness. When we stop resisting loneliness and start listening to it, we begin to uncover the parts of ourselves we've long ignored. Think about this. Some of the greatest minds in history, artists, writers, and visionaries, found their deepest wisdom in solitude. They didn't fear being alone. They used it as fuel. Solitude gives us the space to reflect, to dream, and to grow without external pressure shaping our every move. It's in those quiet moments that we hear the voice beneath all the expectations, the one that tells us who we really are and what we truly want. But make no mistake, learning to be happy alone is not about isolation. It's not about shutting the world out or pretending we don't need connection. It's about building a foundation of self-trust so that when we do connect with others, we do so from a place of wholeness, not emptiness. When we learn to enjoy our own company, relationships become an addition to our joy, not the source of it. We stop settling for companionship that drains us, and we start choosing relationships that align with our values and growth. The shift happens when we stop seeing alone time as something to endure and start seeing it as an opportunity. Instead of saying, "I'm lonely," we say, "I'm learning." Instead of thinking, "No one understands me," we ask, "Do I understand myself?" The more we lean into this journey, the more we realize that being alone doesn't mean being lost. It means being found. So, beloved, what if today was the day you stopped running from yourself? What if instead of avoiding solitude, you embraced it as a teacher? Start small. Take yourself out on a walk. Sit with your thoughts without judgment. Write down what you're feeling. Over time, you'll begin to see that loneliness was never your enemy. It was simply a path leading you back to the one person who has been with you all along, you. You are not alone because you are with yourself. And when you learn to stand strong in your own presence, you'll never fear solitude again. You'll learn that happiness was never something waiting for you out there. It was within you all along, waiting to be discovered. Beloved, when was the last time you spoke to yourself with kindness? Not just a fleeting moment of self-encouragement, but real, deep compassion. The kind you would offer a dear friend in their darkest hour. For so many of us, self-compassion is foreign territory. We are quick to extend love to others, to lift them up when they stumble, but when it comes to ourselves, we are often our own worst critics. The way we speak to ourselves, harsh, unkind, and unforgiving, is a voice we would never use on someone we love. But here's the truth. Until we learn to be our own best friend, we will always search for validation in places that cannot sustain us. Self-compassion is not about self-pity. It is not about making excuses or ignoring our growth. It is about treating ourselves with the same grace and understanding that we so easily give to others. Imagine a child learning to walk. When they fall, do we scold them? Do we tell them they are not good enough? No. We cheer them on. We encourage them to get back up. We celebrate every step forward. Yet as we grow, we lose this patience with ourselves. We expect perfection, and when we fail, we punish instead of nurture. But beloved, how can we grow if we do not give ourselves room to be human? Think of the moments in your life when you needed kindness the most. Maybe you made a mistake. Maybe you felt like you weren't enough. Maybe you were carrying a weight that no one else could see. In those moments, what did you need? Judgment? Criticism? No. You needed love. You needed a voice that said, it's okay, you are trying, you are learning. That voice is the essence of self-compassion. It is choosing to stand by yourself instead of against yourself, no matter the circumstance. One of the biggest myths we carry is that being hard on ourselves will make us better. We believe that if we push ourselves enough, if we are relentless in our self-criticism, we will somehow reach success. But research and lived experience tell a different story. The more we attack ourselves, the more we shrink. The more we shame ourselves, the more we hide. True growth does not come from punishment. It comes from support. When we become our own ally instead of our own enemy, we create an environment where we can thrive. Now, I know this isn't easy. We live in a world that teaches us to seek worth through external validation, achievements, relationships, social approval. But the real transformation happens when we turn inward and say, I am enough as I am. This does not mean we stop striving for growth. It means we stop equating our worth with our performance. We allow ourselves to be fully human, to embrace the highs and the lows, to hold ourselves in love even when we fall short. So, how do we practice self-compassion? It starts with awareness. Pay attention to how you speak to yourself. When you make a mistake, do you call yourself a failure? Or do you remind yourself that failure is a part of learning? When you feel insecure, do you belittle yourself? Or do you offer the same reassurance you would give a friend? Self-compassion is a daily practice, a muscle we must strengthen with intention. It's catching those moments of self-judgment and replacing them with understanding. It's looking in the mirror and choosing to see yourself with soft eyes instead of critical ones. Beloved, you have been with yourself through every heartbreak, every triumph, every silent battle that no one else saw. You deserve your own kindness. You deserve your own love. Becoming your own best friend is not selfish, it is necessary. When you treat yourself with compassion, you do not just heal your own wounds, you change the way you show up in the world. You become more open, more resilient, more capable of giving love because you are no longer pouring from an empty cup. So today I challenge you, stand in front of the mirror and say, I am worthy of kindness. When doubt creeps in, remind yourself, I am doing my best, and that is enough. Speak to yourself with the tenderness you reserve for those you love most, because at the end of the day, the longest relationship you will ever have is the one with yourself. And when you make that relationship a place of love, trust, and compassion, you will never feel alone again. Beloved, we live in a world where it's all too easy to get swept up in the pursuit of external validation. We chase after likes, followers, accolades, and approval from others, believing that these markers of success will give our lives meaning. But in the depths of our hearts, we know that true fulfillment does not come from the applause of others. It comes from within. It comes from the quiet yet powerful recognition that we are enough, exactly as we are. Creating a life that truly fulfills us means stepping away from the constant noise of external expectations and learning to listen to the gentle voice within that knows what we truly need. For so many of us, the desire for approval has shaped our choices, our dreams, and even our identities. From childhood, we were taught that our worth is defined by how well we perform in the eyes of others. We learned to seek approval from our parents, our teachers, our peers. As we grew older, we became conditioned to measure our value by our achievements, our status, and the opinions of those around us. We sacrificed our authenticity in the name of fitting in, believing that if others accepted us, we would finally feel complete. But beloved, external validation is fleeting. It is a fragile foundation to build a life upon. One day we might get the recognition we long for, but the next day it could slip through our fingers. If our worth is based on the approval of others, then we are constantly at the mercy of their ever-changing opinions. No matter how much praise we receive, we will always feel empty if we are not anchored in our own truth. True fulfillment is not about seeking approval. It is about knowing that we are enough, regardless of the outside world's view of us. So how do we begin to create a life that fulfills us without relying on the validation of others? It starts with reclaiming our own voice. We must learn to trust ourselves, to listen to our inner wisdom, and to honor our own values. What are the things that light you up? What are the passions that stir your soul, even when no one is watching? These are the things that truly matter. These are the markers of a life well lived. When we begin to honor what makes us come alive, we free ourselves from the chains of other people's expectations. The first step in creating a fulfilling life is to get clear on what you want, independent of what anyone else thinks. Too often, we let the voices of others dictate our path. We let societal norms tell us what success looks like, what happiness should feel like, and how we should show up in the world. But when we take a step back and ask ourselves, what do I truly want? We begin to unravel the layers of conditioned beliefs and come face to face with our authentic desires. This process of self-discovery is not always easy. It requires us to confront the fears and doubts that have kept us tethered to the opinions of others. It means challenging the limiting beliefs that say we are not enough unless we achieve this or that. It means stepping into the unknown and trusting that the journey of living authentically will bring us everything we need. It is a courageous act to create a life that is true to who we are, especially when the world around us may try to convince us otherwise. As we embark on this journey, we must also learn to let go of perfection. Too often, we hold ourselves to impossibly high standards, believing that only the flawless version of ourselves is worthy of love and success. But beloved, perfection is a myth. It is the quiet killer of joy. Perfectionism keeps us stuck in a cycle of never feeling good enough, always striving, always falling short. But when we let go of the need to be perfect, we create the space for growth, for mistakes, for learning, and for joy. We give ourselves the grace to be human, and in doing so, we make room for a life that is rich with meaning and fulfillment. Another key to living a fulfilling life is learning to set boundaries. So much of our energy is drained when we say yes to things we don't truly want to do simply to gain approval or avoid conflict. But when we begin to honor our own needs, we can create clear boundaries that protect our time, our energy, and our peace. We learn to say no when something does not align with our values or our sense of self-worth. We understand that we do not need to please everyone, and that by saying no to others, we are saying yes to ourselves. In this process, we also learn to celebrate ourselves. We live in a culture that often teaches us to downplay our accomplishments, to wait for others to acknowledge our worth before we acknowledge it ourselves. But true fulfillment comes when we begin to celebrate our own victories, no matter how small. Whether it's completing a project, learning a new skill, or simply showing up for ourselves each day, we deserve to recognize our growth and honor our progress. This journey also involves embracing the present moment. Too often, we are so focused on the future, on the next milestone, the next achievement, that we forget to appreciate where we are right now. Fulfillment is not something we find when we get there. It is something we cultivate in the here and now. When we begin to appreciate the small moments, the quiet joys, the simple acts of living, we realize that fulfillment has always been within our reach. And perhaps one of the most profound shifts in creating a life that fulfills us is learning to be comfortable with ourselves just as we are in this very moment. So often we believe that fulfillment will come when we reach a certain point, when we have the perfect job, the perfect relationship, the perfect body. But beloved, fulfillment is not something we attain. It is something we cultivate within. It is a mindset, a way of being, not a destination. So today I ask you to stop seeking validation from outside sources and start looking inward. Ask yourself, what would it look like for me to live a life that is true to who I am? Trust that when you begin to live authentically, fulfillment will follow. You will no longer feel the need to prove yourself to anyone because you will know deep in your soul that you are already enough. You are worthy of a life filled with purpose, joy, and meaning. And it starts with choosing T. Beloved, there is a quiet power that resides within each of us, a power that we often overlook or even fear. It's the power of being alone, of standing in your own company and realizing that you are enough. But for many of us, the idea of being alone can stir up feelings of anxiety, insecurity, and even fear. We've been taught that solitude equals isolation, that being alone somehow means we are abandoned or unworthy. But in truth, being alone is not the absence of company. It is the opportunity to reconnect with ourselves. It is in our solitude that we discover our truest selves, free from the noise and expectations of the outside world. The fear of being alone is often rooted in a deeper fear, the fear of facing ourselves. When we are constantly surrounded by others, it's easy to lose sight of who we are. We shape our identities around the opinions and expectations of those around us. But when we are alone, we are forced to face the truth of our thoughts, our feelings, and our desires. And that can be intimidating. What if we don't like what we find? What if we are not enough without the constant validation of others? These are the fears that hold us back from embracing solitude. But beloved, it is only in the absence of distraction that we can truly hear the voice within that knows who we are and what we need. To move from fear to freedom, we must first reframe our understanding of solitude. We must stop seeing it as a punishment or a form of loneliness and instead see it as a gift. Solitude is not about being alone with nothing. It is about being alone with everything you are. It is a space where you can explore your passions, your dreams, and your purpose without interference. In this sacred space, there are no expectations, no pressures, just you and the possibility of who you can become. When we learn to thrive in our own company, we release the need for external validation. We come to understand that we do not need others to complete us. We are already whole. This shift is not instantaneous. It takes time and practice to embrace solitude without fear. In the beginning, we may feel uncomfortable, restless, even lost, but this is simply the space where growth begins. Every moment of discomfort is an invitation to explore. Why do we fear being alone? What is it that we are running from? When we sit with our discomfort instead of avoiding it, we begin to uncover the root of our fears. We realize that much of our anxiety stems from the story we tell ourselves that we are not enough, that we need others to affirm our worth. But when we face this fear head on, we begin to rewrite the narrative. We learn that our worth is not dependent on the presence of others. It is inherent within us.